Florida and Georgia, despite their geographical proximity, have experienced drastically different population growth over the years. Back in 1950, Georgia had 700,000 more residents than Florida. However, today, Florida boasts 11 million more residents than Georgia. This significant growth discrepancy can be attributed to various factors. Although Florida is located farther south, there's a saying that the farther south you go, the more north culturally you become. This cultural dynamic has played a role in Florida's rapid growth compared to Georgia, even though Georgia itself has also seen substantial growth. Even though Florida and Georgia share a border today, their origins stem from vastly different colonization experiences by distinct European nations. Before becoming the states we know today, both regions were inhabited by diverse indigenous tribes. However, their colonization histories have profoundly shaped their current compositions. Despite the common emphasis on Virginia and Massachusetts in American history as the country's origins, the initial European settlements within the current US were in Florida. In 1513, Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon landed on North American mainland near what is now St. Augustine. While the narrative of his quest for the Fountain of Youth is a fiction, his arrival spurred subsequent explorations and settlements by Spain and France. Despite these efforts, successful colonies were rare in the early years of colonization. In 1564, the French established a fort in present-day Duval County, but the Spanish, desiring control over the entire land, sent a military force to dismantle it. Subsequently, in 1565, Spain founded the settlement of San Agustin, known today as St. Augustine, marking the oldest continuously inhabited European settlement in the continental US. This establishment solidified Spain's ownership of the Florida Peninsula. Moving northward, Georgia began its developmental journey a few decades later, akin to Florida. Spanish explorers initially ventured into the region in search of trade routes and resources like gold. Despite numerous expeditions, Spain didn't establish any lasting settlements in Georgia. The French set up a colony in what would become modern-day Charleston, South Carolina, but abandoned it shortly afterward. It was ultimately the English who turned their attention to Georgia. In 1670, England founded the province of Carolina. English fur traders frequently ventured south in pursuit of fertile hunting grounds. Despite lacking permanent settlements, Spain established missions aimed at converting the native populations to Christianity. Recognizing the potential northward expansion of Spanish influence from Florida, the English and their Native American allies initiated a military campaign in 1704 to dismantle the Spanish mission system in Georgia. Subsequently, Florida developed a distinctive Spanish heritage, culture, and language, while Georgia mirrored this trend with English influences. In 1776, the original 13 English colonies in North America, including Georgia, rebelled and formed the United States. However, Florida remained under Spanish rule until 1821. Tired of frequent US incursions and lacking resources for effective management or defense, Spain ceded the territory to the United States. This marked the first time both regions existed under a unified government, yet they remained distinctly different from each other. As the 1900s commenced, the United States experienced significant growth due to factors like a high birth rate, advancements in medicine, and immigration. Florida and Georgia, despite their close proximity, grew in markedly different ways over the decades, which we'll delve into shortly. The United States experienced a population boom due to various factors, such as significant migration from Ireland, totaling around 4.5 million individuals between 1880 and 1930. The two world wars in the early 20th century also brought in more migrants to US shores, particularly to the northeastern states. However, these migrants eventually dispersed across the country. During the 1950s, a robust economy, post-war baby boom, and increased external migration led to population surges in almost every state. Notably, in 1950, Georgia had 3.4 million residents compared to Florida's 2.7 million. Within 20 years, Florida's population skyrocketed to nearly 6.8 million. Between 1920 and 1930, millions of African Americans moved from Georgia, Florida, and other southern states to the north, seeking refuge from persecution under Southern laws. This movement significantly impacted Georgia's population. Meanwhile, Florida, despite losing a portion of its black population, experienced a real estate boom that attracted numerous Americans. Another significant event in the 1960s that influenced population growth in Florida was the 1959 Cuban Revolution. Fidel Castro's orchestrated efforts led to the overthrow of Cuban dictator Batista, prompting hundreds of thousands of Cubans to flee to Florida over a relatively short period. This influx further fueled Florida's growth and contributed to its distinctive Cuban heritage, notably concentrated in the Miami region. Although the US has moved past the baby boom era and migration from Cuba and other countries has slowed, Florida maintains an impressive rate of growth, continuing to attract residents from various backgrounds and regions. Florida's sustained growth is primarily attributed to two significant factors: the economy and the climate. As the Sunshine State, Florida's consistently sunny weather holds a particular allure for various demographics, especially the elderly. While not the majority, a considerable number of elderly individuals migrate to Florida, notably from northern states like New York, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Their motivation largely stems from the desire for warmer and more stable weather, overlooking the occasional hurricane season concerns. However, the elderly population doesn't solely compose Florida's migrant influx. The state draws a diverse mix of younger professionals and families seeking employment opportunities. Major cities like Miami, Orlando, and Tampa have experienced job growth in recent years, contributing to the state's appeal. The promising job market, coupled with the climatic advantages, has led many to relocate to Florida. Furthermore, Florida's economy has been a driving force behind its population surge. The state's job opportunities and economic prospects have attracted individuals and families from various backgrounds. This influx has diversified Florida's population, making it a melting pot of cultures and professions. Despite the weather's draw for the elderly, the overall migration to Florida spans across age groups, reflecting a blend of motivations, from climate preferences to economic opportunities. The Sunshine State's appeal has been further amplified by its absence of state income tax, prompting numerous Americans to relocate there. From 2019 to 2022, Miami experienced the highest percentage of inbound moves from other regions in the country, showcasing Florida's magnetic pull. Simultaneously, Georgia has also undergone significant growth in recent years. Presently, both Florida and Georgia stand as dominant states in terms of population and economy. Florida is home to over 22 million residents, while Georgia houses nearly 11 million. Projections indicate substantial growth for both states in the forthcoming decades. However, their growth trajectories differ significantly. Florida boasts major metropolitan hubs such as Miami, 6.1 million, Tampa, 3.1 million, Orlando, 2.7 million, and Jacksonville, 1.6 million, facilitating a more distributed growth and economic activity across the state. Conversely, Georgia's primary metropolitan area is Atlanta, home to approximately 6 million people. The rest of Georgia's metro areas are notably smaller, around 1/10 the size of Atlanta. This disparity in metropolitan size and distribution influences how each state's economy and growth pattern evolve. Florida's multiple major cities contribute to a more evenly spread economic development, while Georgia's economic focus is primarily concentrated in Atlanta. The distinct urban landscapes and population distributions in these states shape their economic dynamics and development strategies moving forward. Georgia's growth heavily hinges on Atlanta, unlike Florida, which features a more dispersed economic landscape. While Georgia and Atlanta will continue to experience growth, having multiple focal points for potential migration within a state offers people more choices. In contrast, if a family considering Georgia finds Atlanta unsuitable, there are fewer economically viable alternatives within the state compared to Florida. Both Florida and Georgia present appealing options for Americans seeking relocation and ample economic opportunities. However, Florida's dominance over Georgia is primarily attributed to a combination of factors: lower taxes, significant external migration, and having multiple centers of attraction. This has positioned Florida as the more dominant state between the two, a trend likely to persist in the foreseeable future. Understanding why Florida outpaces Georgia in terms of population growth involves considering these aspects, highlighting how Florida's multifaceted appeal and diverse economic hubs contribute to its continued growth. If you found this exploration interesting, consider subscribing to the channel for more insights. Thank you for reading. That's a wrap for this video. Why Americans are moving to Florida and not Georgia.